Hi, everybody. Welcome to this Personality Hacker presentation of how to pick the perfect gift based on your personality. And when we say your personality, we mean your personality, but also the people's personality you're buying gifts for, because it's really more about the person you're buying a gift for than even your personality. So it's based on how you're wired and also the people you're buying gifts for. Well, this is going to be divided into three basic sections. We're going to talk about picking out gifts, the perfect gift for people based on their personality. We're going to show you a little bit about how deep this can go. We're going to talk about things like cognitive functions, about the different parts of people's minds and how they're wired and how to pick the perfect gift based on that. Show you a little bit of the reverse engineering there. Then we're going to briefly just touch base on some of the profiler training certification courses coming up. Enrollment's ending tomorrow, so we're going to talk briefly about that, share a little bit about that, and then we're going to open up for questions. You can ask questions around type. You can ask questions around profiler training. You can ask questions about how our holidays are going and how our week's going or month's going, all that stuff. But we're glad you're here, and let's go ahead and get right into some of the content.
So there's a story behind this. There's a story behind why we created a gift giving guide. And it's not just to capitalize on the holiday season. It's actually because I probably needed a gift giving guide more than anybody else. I was raised
in... I needed one more than you did, but that's okay.
I don't know, man. You had a lot more.
I had more experience
than I did.
I had more trauma, so you had more like lack of experience.
You had experience in trauma. I had no experience at all. And the reason why is because I was raised in a culture and a household that chose not to celebrate any of the holidays or birthdays. So when I left the paradigm of my youth, I found myself as a late 20, early 30 something that suddenly had, like, I entered the space of, I chose to celebrate holidays. I chose to kind of dip my toes in there and see what I thought about it. And I actually ended up enjoying it quite a bit. But the one thing that I was terrible at was giving gifts because I had never done it. I had no practice or experience doing it. And so I would take a wild stab at the kinds of things that people liked. I would wrap the gifts in these horrific, complicated, complex ways to match Christmas gifts and birthday gifts that I had seen on television and in like display cases. And because I had no idea what I was doing, I, of course, fell back on the one tool that has served me the most. I fell back on personality typology. So what I chose to do is I chose to look at gift giving as a way to match people's mental wiring with something that I thought would be truly ideal for them. And I was pretty bad initially, like I was kind of bad at it. And I realized I was not quite hitting the target in the middle. I had almost but not quite figured it out until about the second or third Christmas or birthday series. I started realizing that there is an algorithm here that actually makes gift giving a million times easier. And so what we're going to do is we're going to teach you our algorithm for giving gifts. And this is labor of love and terrible experience, like horrible, terrible experiences. And what was nice is that people cut me a lot of slack.
Yeah.
Like in my first couple of Christmases, I don't think people expected me to know what I was doing, but I don't think they thought I was going to be as bad as I was. And so it was kind of people to cut me some slack, but I didn't want people to like pat me on the head and go, oh, thank you very much for your terrible gift. I wanted people to be wowed and amazed. And I came up with this algorithm.
Well, so, and just a quick kind of backstory, when Antonia started celebrating like Christmas, for example, your only experience was like watching movies, like Christmas movies growing up, right? Mm-hmm. Like that's really the only experience she'd had with this. So she sees all these Christmas movies like Home Alone or something, let's say, with these perfectly wrapped with nice bows Christmas gifts. So she'd spend hours and days, literally glass of wine, doing these presents in perfection for like a 5-year-old, right? And it looked beautiful and they were all stacked around there. And that was kind of her impression of Christmas, this like Macy's store display of Christmas. Our Christmas tree is like really elegant looking. The gifts are always wrapped nicely. So I actually really appreciate the fact you didn't have experience because you like put so much attention and thought to it.
The first year that I wrapped gifts, I put so much tape on them to get them perfect that people couldn't open their gifts. Like we had children trying to unwrap their gifts and like we had to literally cut them. And I think it wasn't until like my third Christmas that I realized that the people shouldn't probably have to cut their gifts open. Like they should just be able to unwrap them, like throw them open. So I finally figured that one out after a while. That's my Christmas trauma story. What's yours? And Joel, your experience in gift giving was that you actually had a relationship with somebody who,
I think their love language is gift giving, actually.
yeah,
And I think when somebody's love language is gift giving, that means a lot. If you get the right gift, it really matters. And I wasn't really good at gift giving. Like, it was really tough for me. So I had a little trauma in picking the wrong things, or just not hitting the mark for the person that I was in a relationship with. And even family members and friends, I'm not really that great. And this methodology has really shifted myself. Like, I've shifted everything to this. I'm following this pretty much this method to now pick gifts going forward. And it's been very successful for me. Like, pretty much all the gifts I've gotten you liked, right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
just use the same methodology we're going to teach you right now.
Yep.
This is good stuff. So watch carefully.
So when Joel says that person's love language is gift giving, that's another layer that we're not really going to talk about, but there's a concept called the 5 love languages. It's a pretty popular concept around how people sometimes use gift giving as an expression of love. So if the person you're in a relationship with, or a friend or family member, has gift giving as their love language, and you do not have gift giving as a love language, this might help save your bacon. All right, so let's get started. So we're going to go pretty fast on some of these fundamentals, because in the last webinar we did, the first kicked off the Profiler Training Certification course. In that webinar, we taught you how to figure out what the cognitive functions are, or the mental processes for each of the different types. We're going to kind of assume that you have already watched that webinar or can go back and reference it, and you understand that every personality type, all 16 Myers-Briggs type, have those 4 fundamental components to their personality types called cognitive functions. And they are not mental processes that influence us the most as people. Some of them are strengths, some of them are blind spots, some of them are weaknesses, but even the blind spots have a tendency to whisper in our ears all the time. They are the elements of us that have the most influence, and are things that we have a tendency to see the lenses we see the world through, and lenses that we judge the world through and make decisions. And so if you really want to hit at the heart of somebody's personality type in gift giving, you have to understand how their mind is wired, and you head right for those cognitive functions. Now, it's not as easy as that. There's more to the algorithm, but just know that there's 4 fundamental components of type. They're cognitive functions, and each person has them at various degrees of sophistication.
If you've been watching Personality Hacker, or been around us for a while, or listening to the podcast, you know we talk about the CAR model. And basically, this is a quick little framework for us to lay those cognitive functions out. Whereas your strength, the cognitive functions, again, that 4-letter code in your Myers-Briggs type gives you basically an inside track. It's like a decoder ring for the way your mind is wired. These cognitive functions are the way you learn information and you make decisions. And you basically use 2 of these as strengths. You have a primary way that you make decisions, and a primary way that you learn information. And then we've basically laid these out in a CAR model. One of those is going to be your driver, and the other one is going to be your co-pilot. And then right behind those are their exact opposites. And we call that the 10-year-old and 3-year-old in the CAR model. And basically, when you're looking at your cognitive functions, in fact, the last webinar, we talked about how to reverse engineer. So for example, I'm an ENFP, and we talked about how to take the ENFP letters and figure out, based on that, which cognitive functions I'd be using in this CAR model. It's technically called your cognitive function stack if you're reading like other resources or things online. That's the technical name of it.
And it's good to know that the driver is a big piece of who you are. It is the primary way that you engage with reality. If you ask somebody to describe themselves as a person, even if they have no awareness of typology or functions, they'll spend about 70 or 80% of their time describing this process or elements that come through this process. The co-pilot is also a strength. It's something that you have natural talent in, but it requires a little bit more skill development to get as good as the driver. And so while it's on our conscious awareness, it's something that we delight in, but it's not something we're as attached to as our driver process. Our 10-year-old is also in a conscious awareness. So this is a part of us that, while not as much of a talent or a strength as either of the front 2 passengers, it's still something we sort of identify ourselves around, and we have a relationship with it. It's something that we usually enjoy, and sometimes will overwhelm us. And then there's the 3-year-old process, which is very unconscious for us and has a tendency to be a blind spot. There are different layers of understanding and awareness around the 3-year-old process. There are elements to the 3-year-old that are very important for us to integrate into who we are and our personality to become our fully actualized self. But it usually takes a little bit of maturing to get to that space. And so our 3-year-old is something that we have a tendency to kind of push to the side. We don't really like it since it's the opposite of our driver. And since our driver is what we identify ourselves around, the 3-year-old has a tendency to be something that we don't really like to see about around ourselves. And it's something that is that we identify as being sort of a like a real blind spot or a weakness. So just remember all 4 of those positions and how they influence our type. And this is for all 16 personality types. We all have the same relationship with those 4 components of who we are. Doesn't matter what your type is, doesn't matter which processes are falling in the stack, we all have the same relationship with those 4 components.
So a little bit of housekeeping here, just some frameworks for you. If you want to draw this out, we're going to share the slides after the session, but if you want to just draw out that car model, those 4 different boxes, we're getting ready to go to a slide next, if you're watching on the webinar, where we're going to show you each type and all of the functions that each type uses. So you can lay that out in your function stack or in the car model, basically. And again, we're going to share these slides later. If you're watching on Facebook Live or somewhere live right now and you're not on the webinar, you want to come over to the webinar to see these slides live, and there's a link right below it. But we're also going to share the slides with you. You can have those later. Just follow along as best you can for now. And then we're going to go deep into each one of those cognitive functions to tell you how they're wired.
We won't go super deep.
Not super deep, but like enough to where you sense more than this chart you're seeing right now.
Exactly. Yeah. All right. So what we've got here is a chart that gives you the driver, co-pilot, 10-year-old, and 3-year-old for every single one of the 16 Myers-Briggs types. Now, we're using our nicknames for each of these functions. They have technical names behind them, but we're not sure what your level of expertise is. So we've chosen to use our nicknames just to make it more accessible to anybody who might not be familiar with cognitive functions. The nicknames are an encapsulation of how the process works. Basically, it's etymology, where it really starts. And so go ahead and take a moment to look at all 16 of those types and identify if you know the Myers-Briggs type of, say, your spouse or your children, friends or family or coworkers. Just take a moment to scan through and write down what their driver, their co-pilot, their 10-year-old and 3-year-old are. Now, we won't spend a ton of time doing that because we need to continue the webinar, but like Joel said, these will all be available later. So if you just want to sort of tag the mental processes of people in your life that are closest to you and quickly sort of jot them down, we'll give you a moment to do that.
What I would do, if I were you, I would pick the one person that's difficult to buy gifts for. Pick the one person you're like, I've got my whole list done. My whole shopping list is finished this year for Christmas. And I've got the one person that I have no idea what to do with. Pick that person. That's a great exercise for you to go ahead and just write that person down. Write their functions down, and then that'll be a good framework for you to practice going through this. Some of the things we're going to talk about next, you can then identify some of the keys to maybe picking them a great gift this year.
Yep. All right. So find the trouble person in your life.
we'll let it go for like a minute or two longer in this.
Probably not 2 full minutes.
Not well. It's a
moment.
When I say a minute, I don't literally mean. So this is where Antonia's personality comes in. She's wired for accuracy, which is about precision, about correct things. I'm giving a general, I think you know, right? You understand what I mean. Just like a general sense of a minute or two.
All right.
A couple minutes. Okay. Might be 30 seconds, might be 5 minutes. It's a couple minutes.
That's like a couple minutes. All right. Okay, so we're assuming that you've written down the driver, co-pilot, 10-year-old and 3-year-old processes for the trouble in your life, the person who's the most difficult to shop for. All right, so what we're going to do now,
we all have one of them,
is we're going to go through each one of these functions and talk about the things that these processes love. All right, like what delights them, what makes them feel good, what are the kinds of things you're going to be targeting when you want to give them a gift. So we'll start with the 2 sensing processes. Sensation, and its technical name is extroverted sensing, loves anything that delights their body. Sometimes it's adrenaline, sometimes it's sensuality, experiences. Either way, it's all about the kinesthetic feeling of being in the moment. And they're also very good at reading other people's body language. So just kind of tag that for a moment as we go through. Now, memory, which is introverted sensing, technically called introverted sensing, loves capturing a fantastic moment to keep as a permanent part of themselves. It's all about collecting, including but not limited to memories. So sensation and memory, 2 sensing processes, but they have a different style of love. But these are the things that they really have a tendency to soak up.
So as examples of this, Sensation might like experiences, physical experiences, expression of something in physicality. My brother's a sensation user, and he's also a bodybuilder. He likes to lift weights. He's a bodybuilder. So oftentimes for gifts, he appreciates things that will help him get into that experience. And in memory, the introverted sensing. Have you ever seen that? Again, this is not necessarily how to pick a gift for these people. These are just general sense of what this looks like. If you're very, very new to this, there's that store in the malls here in the United States called, I think it's called Things Remembered, where there's a lot of different artifacts where you can have things inscribed, you can remember occasions, things of this nature, just to kind of give you a sense of like what this might look like from a physical product standpoint. A lot of times maybe memory people would have like photos, different albums, things around their house, objects that can help them remember things. Again, this is grossly oversimplifying it, but just to give you a sense of something, if you're brand new to this, to tether yourself to.
We're actually going to go through suggested gifts in a moment. So we're just going to bring you an overview of what they look like, but we will definitely go through the kinds of gifts that we recommend for people who use these processes. I promise it's coming. I just don't want.
I think we have a panelist on, probably one of our team members that you probably heard some noise in the background. If you're one of the Personality Hacker team members, if you'd mute yourself, that'd be great.
I just muted them.
Awesome.
All right, cool. Well, all right, so let's move on to the intuitive processes. Now, perspectives, technically called introverted intuitive, loves a calm environment and mind to generate brilliant ahas. So any tool that gets them closer to an aha is a winner. Now, the other intuitive process, exploration, technically called extroverted intuition, loves novelty and new experiences. So engaging their imagination and what if mentality is irresistible to them. So those are the four what are technically called perceiving processes. They're ways that we take in information and understand and learn and what captures our imagination and our minds. Let's now move on to what's called judging processes, or the ways that we make decisions and the ways that we create should statements in our life.
I'm eager to get the application, but I won't right now.
We will. It's just a moment.
I'll wait.
1 minute.
I'm excited.
1 minute.
Keep moving.
All right. So effectiveness, technically called extroverted thinking, loves things that are efficient, organized, and time-saving. So make my time stretch and accomplish more is the name of the game for effectiveness user. And accuracy, introverted thinking, technically called, loves leverage. So optimizing performance or a tool that streamlines a frequent job and makes it more pleasurable is highly desirable to people who use this process. And the final two are the feeling processes. Harmony, which is technically called extroverted feeling, loves getting needs met. But since they're so often getting other people's needs met, they neglect their own. And permission to self-pamper is really appreciated. And then authenticity, which is technically called introverted feeling, loves self-expression. The outlet might differ, but the desire to create art remains the same for all authenticity people. So these are the 8 cognitive functions and some things that really delight them. But kind of keep that in mind as we move on to the algorithm and some recommendations for gifts.
Now remember, you're going to have 2 of these out of these 8 we just talked about. 2 of those are going to be the strength of the person you're buying a gift for. One's going to be their driver, one's going to be their co-pilot. But they're also going to have 2 other opposite processes in their back seat of their car. Remember, we talked about that car model before. It's actually going to be 4 processes we're going to be totally looking at, and then we're going to zoom in on what to do about those.
All right, so keep all of those in mind. Keep the driver, co-pilot, 10-year-old and 3-year-old for each of the types in mind. Keep all 8 of these cognitive functions in mind, and let me give you our algorithm. Here is our recommendation. Focus on the co-pilot and the 10-year-old processes for the type of person that you are purchasing a gift for. And here's why. People love their driver process. It is how they identify with themselves. So they tend to indulge it. It's rare when we haven't purchased something for ourselves that delights this function. So if you're buying something for somebody that is delighting their driver process, you're probably going to have to lay down serious money. The only reason why they haven't bought it for themselves is because they couldn't afford it. That's usually it. Most of the time, if we can at all afford it, we will buy things that delight our driver process. And on the flip side, we recommend that people stay away from the 3-year-old unless you really know the person. So while we usually need tools to make our lives easier in our 3-year-old process, it will feel anticlimactic to get something that delights the 3-year-old, because the 3-year-old isn't something that we really identify with. So if we get something for the 3-year-old process, we usually open it and go, oh, thanks, right? Because it's really not something that we think of ourselves as truly desiring or wanting. The only exception is when you make the life of the inferior function much, much easier. So if you have the ability to figure out what element of their life is particularly going missing because of that 3-year-old inferior, and you somehow plug the dike, right? You put your finger in the dam and help them have an easier experience of it, then you can focus on the 3-year-old. Our recommendation is to not go for the driver, because you'll have to lay out some serious bucks, and try to stay away from the 3-year-old, because usually we're not as excited by the 3-year-old process. That said, our co-pilot is something that is in our conscious awareness and we really identify with. And oftentimes, while we really want stuff there, we don't indulge it like we do our driver.
It's hard to give ourselves permission.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes, like, we kind of really enjoy things in there, but we go, maybe next time, right? We can't always afford it. And our 10-year-old is something that we really won't. We want those things, but we really won't lay out the money for them, because we think we're being self-indulgent. So take, for example, I have wanted to do something for my nutritional health for a long time, but that was me getting my need met, which is an expression of extroverted feeling or harmony. I'm an ENTP, but my 10-year-old's harmony. So I've been putting it off and putting it off and putting it off and putting it off. And this year I'm getting it for Christmas from Joel, because I'm like, Joel, get me this for Christmas. I will never buy this for myself, and I need it, and I will never invest the money in it. And at the same time, I will lay down tons of money for exploration. I'll go, hey, let's just buy plane tickets to, I don't know, anywhere right now. And Joel and I will get online and we will buy plane tickets on a whim to different places in the United States. And like, we'll just go, we'll just leave.
Was it 2 years ago? We had to get away for the winter. So we just like bought plane tickets, and we rented a van, and we just slept in the back of a van and drove around South Florida for a couple of days, just to have fun, just to go quickly, not spend a lot of money, but we did just do it on the whim. And we'll indulge that. We'll indulge that part of us.
Yeah, we'll just do it. We'll just go like, yeah, let's get out of here. Let's just go. And yet I can't spend money on trying to figure out my nutritional health, right? Like, that seems like weird, paradoxical, value system. And yet that's just how it works. So avoid the driver, because most of the time we'll lay down money like that for a driver. Avoid the 3-year-old, because that's not really us. Go for the co-pilot and go for the 10-year-old. And I think a lot of times the leverage point is, for me, what I do with Joel is I get him something I get something that is effectiveness, which is his 10-year-old, for his birthday. And I get him something that is authenticity, which is his co-pilot, for Christmas. I spend more money on Christmas presents than birthday presents. That might be something that's opposite for you. And so I spend more money on the co-pilot's gifts than I do on the 10-year-old gifts. And sometimes I mix and match them. Like, almost every year I get something for Joel that delights his authenticity or his introverted feeling. I've gotten him like easels, and I've gotten him djembe drums. I've gotten him like art, different elements of art. For his effectiveness for his birthday, I've gotten him cordless drills. 1 year I combined the two, and I got you a drafting table, like a really nice artist/architecture drafting table, which I figured would be like, you'd be able to use for both. So if you can combine them, all the better.
Yeah. And then for me, like, for example, just like 2 different examples, like for Antonia's birthday, I might often get her something that will make her harmony process. So, if she's in a nesting time period around the house, or something that makes her life easier in, like household type things that are really fun for her, maybe to express herself, like decorations, things of this nature. And then for Christmas, oftentimes, like 1 year, it was around her introverted thinking process, accuracy. I got her video game console and some video game system stuff, and basically
that year was a good year.
All her favorite like video games for that year, so she could indulge her TI part, her accuracy part.
Yeah.
So these are some ideas, and it's really interesting if you can isolate down to the functions. You can start to even make a methodology every year, like a little framework in your mind. You don't have to tell anybody about this. It could just be secret to you, where you're picking gifts based on the cognitive functions. And people are like, wow, how did you know this is kind of something that would resonate with me? It's really kind of a cool little algorithm.
Yep. Yeah, it's my favorite algorithm. So that's what I now do with everybody. I get them something for their 10-year-old for their birthday and something for their co-pilot for Christmas. And I think I usually do pretty well. I usually hit it out of the park.
I want to just say that if you know a person really well, obviously you could focus on the driver or 3-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
If you really know, maybe it's a spouse or a friend that you've been, or a parent or a child, somebody you really know well, it's not like you should have to stay away from the driver or the 3-year-old process. Right. If you know that and you think you can really match those well, and you know that that person would really like that, that's possible to go there. These are just leverage points, because this is oftentimes something that somebody would be like, ooh, I don't know if I want that for myself, or I want it, but I don't know if I'll buy that for myself. Often this is a really good leverage point. And don't discount the other two processes as well, the 3-year-old, because there is some gold there if you're looking for something that you're really close to. I always say, though, you got to know what you're doing.
Yeah.
You have to really know what you're doing, because again, they probably already have it if it's their driver. And it's probably something that they're not really sure of if it's their 3-year-old. So that's why we focus on the co-pilot and the 10-year-old in this system.
All right. So let's get to specifics. What does that look like to shop for we're going to call it the front seat and the back seat for each of the types. So let's go into specifics. So sensation, or what's technically called extroverted sensing, is the driver or co-pilot process for all SPs. ESPs, it's their driver. ISPs, it's their co-pilot. So some of the gifts that you might want to consider getting somebody who has sensation in their front seat are like dancing classes, lessons, experiences. 1 year, your mom, who's an INFJ, who is a master of observing human behavior, bought your brother a zip line experience, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so she just knows him, and so he's an ESFP, and she bought him an experience on a zip line, which I thought was a really good idea. So buying experiences like that, things that are adrenaline inducing, are pretty important. So, and if they're an ISP and they have some weirdness around, like really scary experience, physical experience, sometimes that happens, then things more like lessons or dancing classes. Sensual objects like soft robes or designer perfume or designer headphones, like Beats by Dr. Dre, or something that really optimizes the experience, because sensation is really in touch with all the little nuances of sensory experience. So most sensation people have like a preference for one of their senses over others. You can see some of them are cooks, some of them are super into music. So just like observe what are the sensory experiences that they seem to go toward, and go for that. Almost every year I buy my ISFP sister-in-law something that is fuzzy and soft. And she has kind of a quirky personality type and quirky style. So I always get it in like zebra print or something to that effect. And it's always a hit. So something that delights her tactile senses usually is a hit for her.
Yeah. And then 1 year we got her something for Christmas, was identity focused for her authenticity part. So it was about her children, some of the activities they were in, some of this aspect here of her personality.
So somebody asked, is a love for designer brands actually a thing correlated with SE, or does it just need to be good quality? And I would actually say one of the elements of extroverted sensing is that they're very aware of how people see them. For sensation or extroverted sensing, that's like something that's always on their radar. So brands are a good thing, because for SPs, particularly I think SFPs, they usually find themselves identifying with brands. Their introverted feeling or authenticity gets sort of aligned with certain brands, and extroverted sensing wants to have people see them in a certain way. They're very aware of it. So I would actually default to name brand items for extroverted sensing. You don't have to, not every single one wants that, but that would be my default. If I knew somebody was an SP and I had to give them a gift and I didn't know anything about them, I would probably default to the designer, something that's designer or name brand. And then name brand items, clothing, handbags, some status symbols, right? Extroverted sensing is very aware of how other people perceive them. This is not 100% across the board, obviously, but most of the time you'll see SPs wearing they frequently have like Nike or Adidas shirts on. They'll frequently wear name brand shoes. Like that's a thing for them. So I would default to that. Now, if it's in the back seat of the car, if it's a 10-year-old or 3-year-old process, like it is for NJs, and it's a 10-year-old process for ENJs and a 3-year-old process for INJs, I would go to the very simple sensory pleasures, like a massage gift certificate, a a fun class, something that's not like an intense class, like they're learning a skill, like an intense skill, but something that's like
Don't make it work.
work, right? I mean, make it work. Effort.
Don't make it seem like work.
Right.
Yeah, that's the point.
So something like belly dancing or salsa, something that they can just get out there and have fun. Sensual objects, again, like soft robes or spa gift certificates or bath fizzies or like chocolate covered strawberries, something that really delights the senses, but in a very rudimentary young way. And then like things like handmade chocolates, I guess I just said that. So for sensation in the front seat, you want to make it more of an intense experience. In the back seat, you want to make it more of like a very like sensory pleasure experience. All right, so let's move on to the next one.
Yeah.
All right, so memory, or introverted sensing, is the driver and co-pilot of all SJs. It's the driver process for ISJs and the co-pilot for ESJs. And again, it's about capturing the moment and capturing the special moment of like holidays and birthdays. So we recommend doing like personalized or dated Christmas tree ornaments. Family photos or photo mosaics are big, right? Anything that's kind of creative, but also has an element of, you know, like where they came from and the heritage and the family is very important. Collectibles to add to their collection. Most memory people collect something, even if it's not like out in the open. So kind of find out what their desired collectible is and get them something that is in alignment with that. Books on history, fiction and nonfiction, and things like subscriptions to Ancestry.com. I had a subscription to Ancestry.com that I found super fascinating for about 2 weeks. And then I was like, oh crap, I have a 6 months subscription to this. And I've instantly lost interest. And then I thought, wow, I bet SJs really like Ancestry.com. And so I was like, I will give it as a gift from now on to people who have memory in their front seat. In their back seat, as a 10-year-old or 3-year-old, these are for NPs. And for 10-year-old, it's the INPs, and the 3-year-old is the ENPs. So I would go with very personal things that are memory oriented, like music, movies, or other cultural content from when they were in high school. That is an imprint time period for literally everyone. So I would recommend specifically focusing on high school memories as opposed to just general memories, because most, even NPs get very imprinted on that time period. So like collections, right? Like music collections from that time period. Quirky, context-appropriate survival kits, right? It goes back to that safety mechanism that a lot of memory people have, but they're kind of fun. They're like, you know, like the survival kit to get you through the first day, you know, through your senior year of high school or something to that effect. Like these like sort of quirky survival kits that I see like for different places. So it's kind of a humorous element that plays on our underlying fears. And then you can also get like a subscription if you have the money to throw down, and especially if it's going for somebody's like 3-year-old process, like a subscription to a bookkeeper or a tax accountant. If you want to go really for something that the person will be like, thanks, but like 6 months later go, thank you, then you'll want to do something to that effect that, again, plugs the dike and makes their life a little easier.
I have memory as my 3-year-old, and I had a meeting with our tax guy last week for like 45 minutes, and I came down shaking afterward. I was like, I feel so overwhelmed.
This is somebody recently in our Intuitive Awakening group said, I'm an ENFP, and I have I'm now dating an ENFP, and it's awesome. And what do everybody else think? And they're like, I'm an ENFP dating an ENFP. And the first thing I thought of is I'm an ENTP dating an ENFP. And I'm like, just wait till tax season, guys. It's all fun and games until tax season. And then both of you are like, it's not mine. And the other person's like, it's not mine. And then it's just a game of hot potato trying to throw the taxes at the other person. So it's a great life until tax season. And then it's kind of horrifying for a couple weeks. And then it goes back to being great.
The struggle is real.
The struggle is real. All right. So
are we getting questions and stuff?
No, I think we're good.
Checking it. Okay, cool.
Nope, we're good.
Again, if you're watching, if you just joined us and you've got questions coming up, we have a little field there for you to go and type your question in. We can answer those in the question and answer time. We're going to finish up this on gift giving. We're going to talk briefly about our Profiler Training Certification course, and then we're going to open it up for you to ask questions live on the air.
All right, so let's go into perspectives, technically called introverted intuition. It is the driver process for INJs and the co-pilot for ENJs. Now, as a driver process, perspectives people like chill. They like things that are zen. So we recommend going for the zen. Yoga mats, Miniature Zen Gardens, a very nice journal. Most NJs that use perspectives journal. So getting them something that's like a really nice setup for journaling, nice pens, that sort of thing. Deep comprehensive books on their favorite topics is a good idea, as well as online programs and information products. NJs,
they love to learn.
Love to learn. So information products are usually delightful to people who use this as a driver or co-pilot. Now, when it's in the back seat, as a 10-year-old or a 3-year-old, it's the 10-year-old process for ISPs and the 3-year-old process for ESPs. So things like marrying, especially ISPs, I've noticed love concepts of like reading body language. So books or courses on reading body language is usually a hit. Deep comprehensive books on favorite topics. It could be mechanics, it could be art, but usually this delights that intuitive process of theirs in the backseat. And Audible books or subscriptions to favorite pundits. So a lot of ESPs have too much sensation going on to be able to like sit still and read, but they usually like to consume content in an Audible way. So getting them Audible books and subscriptions are usually a hit with people who have it as a backseat, especially as a 3-year-old. All right, so let's go to exploration. This is the driver and co-pilot for all NPs. It's the driver for ENPs, and it is the co-pilot for INPs. And this is not that difficult, in my opinion, to find one for an NP. You just get them something they've never tried before, and it's usually a hit. I had somebody buy me a yodeling pickle one year, and I was so delighted by it, I couldn't even tell you. So something that's like a novelty sometimes works, but usually it's something that allows them to experience something they've never experienced before. So like a Southwest Airlines gift card would be good, or whatever is the airline of your choice. We like Southwest. It's not an advertisement. New luggage. That was something that your ex-mother-in-law got you one year, and wasn't it like your favorite gift ever?
Inadvertently. And I was like, this is awesome. It's like really quality luggage. I was like, I could travel with this. This is great. Yeah, I loved it.
Yeah. Food, beer, wine, coffee of the world monthly clubs, right? Anything that will give them a taste of something perpetually. And video games, not just like the easy ones, but more like role-playing video games and first-person shooter video games. A lot of ENPs, maybe not the older generations, but I would say anybody who's like Gen X or below, most ENPs play video games of some sort. So video games are oftentimes a hit. Joseph Christopher said, what about a Himalayan salt lamp for perspectives people? I would think that a Himalayan salt lamp would actually go very well for an INJ.
Oddly specific.
It is. Well, no, I mean, that's what they're thinking about, so I totally get it. Yeah, I would say the Himalayan salt lamp would probably be a hit, especially if you know the person is into that kind of more sort of esoteric element, which a lot of NJs are.
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely. All right. So exploration in the backseat. This would be SJs. So it's a 10-year-old process for ESJs and a 3-year-old process for ISJs. So my recommendation on this one would be games, and not video games, but like board games. One of our very good friends is an ISFJ, and whenever he comes over, he brings board games, and he always wants to play them. He loves Apples to Apples and Pictionary and that sort of thing. And I was like, that makes sense. So games are usually a hit if you're going to buy exploration for somebody who has it in the backseat. Creative projects, miniatures, scrapbooking, that sort of thing is oftentimes a hit for SJs. Humorous gifts, bathroom or comic book collections, hidden flasks, funny mugs. This delights their like little kid, tee-hee-hee-hee part of them. You'll have to know your audience because some SJs are a little too serious for that, but most of the time they have a crazy streak in them, and those sort of things delight that. And then again, the food, beer, wine, coffee of the world monthly clubs are always good. And that's even if it's in the backseat, because it gives you a taste of something perpetually to try new, especially know exactly what the person likes in those particular subcategories.
So we've been talking about those 4 learning or perceiving functions, technically called perceiving functions. The 2 sensing functions, sensation and memory. And then we've just talked about perspectives and exploration. And remember, these are just starting points for you. Now that you kind of have a sense of these, and you go on to personalhacker.com and read more about how these functions work, you might be able to make some more of your own lists from this, or even people in your life that are different types that use these. Start to think in terms of, oh man, I could expand on this list. What are some other ideas, some brainstorms based on the starting points here that you could start to make a list of these these kind of things that people would like that use these functions. So we're going to shift now from the perceiving functions, or the way people take in information, and we're going to go over to what's technically called the judging functions, the way people decide about the information they've taken in. So this is decision making. And let's talk about those four now and how gifts look for those types of people.
So before we move on, somebody said, what would you think about Monopoly for SJs? I can't imagine anybody over the age of 12 isn't infuriated by Monopoly, but if I was going to buy Monopoly for somebody who's an SJ because I knew that they kind of liked it.
Infuriated?
Yeah, it's an infuriating game, isn't it?
I actually I haven't played it in years.
There's no way you like Monopoly.
I probably wouldn't like it anymore.
No, there's no way.
I liked it when I was younger.
Yeah, no, yeah, exactly. Nobody over the
I
age of
remember
12.
it taking like days to play. You'd have to find
It
something to
does.
set up in the house. It
Yeah.
was like 6 hours later, like I can't keep playing. We got to play tomorrow, and then we had to stop and play later.
It's like
That was why it was infuriating.
It's
I actually liked it.
it's a 12-hour game that ends in somebody's complete and total annihilation.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like kind of an awful game. But anyway, that said, if I were to buy Monopoly for somebody who's a Monopoly enthusiast over the age of 12 somehow, I would probably get them a collector's edition of Monopoly that references something that they're really into. So if they're like into Lord of the Rings, I'd get them, well, nobody's into Lord of the Rings anymore like they used to. Game of Thrones, I'd get them the Game of Thrones Monopoly collection, or the Firefly Monopoly collection, or something that is very tailored to them as an individual and what I know about them. All right, so let's move on, like you said.
Yeah. So let's talk about the two thinking decision-making processes. Effectiveness, technically called extroverted thinking. This is the driver or co-pilot of all TJs. So all the TJs, ESTJs, ENTJs, INTJs, ISTJs are going to use this as either their driver or their co-pilot process. And remember, effectiveness is all about getting results. It's about what works. It's about getting something external in the world accomplished. So often when somebody's using this as a strength in the front seat of their car, they're looking for things that'll make their life simple, streamlined, help them accomplish something, tools that will help them get things done or be more productive. These are the kind of the frameworks of the principles you're going to look at whenever you're doing this. So something like, this quick list here to get you started: on-the-go Wi-Fi routers, for example. One of those things you could take in your car as a hotspot. If you need to get online and do some work when you're on the road, something like that might be really powerful, along with a subscription to it. A subscription to business or hobby magazines, things that will help them learn more about how to make things happen, whether it's a hobby, building things, constructing things, or maybe it's business, learning how to do things better in business. Also, subscription to business book summaries. Somebody that's using this function as their primary or secondary co-pilot function, maybe they don't have time to read all these books, but they still want the information. They want to get it accomplished. So business book summaries are great because it can help them get a lot of information quickly in a summary fashion. And then, something like a LiveScribe pen might be something else as an idea. Something where a LiveScribe pen, I'm sure there's other brands as well. This is just the brand we know of, where you write, and as you write, it records everything you're writing. So if you're at a seminar or a workshop or a business meeting, as you take notes, not only are you writing on paper, but it's digitally recording what you write. And there's all sorts of options you can use that pen for to be able to capture information.
Yeah, what's cool about a LiveScribe pen is that not only are you writing notes, but if you're writing it on the LiveScribe paper, it's recording
right?
it.
Like audio.
It records the audio into the pen, and when you touch the piece of paper where you're taking that note, it automatically goes to the audio of what it was talking about when you took that note. So they're like really cool. Not an advertisement. So
I guess
anyway,
it sort
something
of was, though, inadvertently.
I just think it's cool. So anyway, something like that would be really good. If you're looking at it for the back seat, so it's the 10-year-old process for EFPs and the 3-year-old process for IFPs. And this is all about tools for easing mundane projects, like a cordless drill, like what I got for Joel for his birthday a couple years ago, or like a Leatherman's tool. Somebody asked, what about a Swiss Army knife? That would delight extroverted thinking or effectiveness. They said, what about for an ISTJ? I think it would be a hit for an ISTJ, honestly, if they didn't already have one. I would be surprised if they didn't have one. And that's the challenge to buying something for somebody's front seat, is that you have to make sure they don't already have one of those things because they put priority on it. But if they have it, yeah, absolutely. That is a great idea. Things like food processors and protein shakers for the workout buff, and external hard drives for the tech geek, and smartphone apps which track and remind about things, like just whatever makes the EFP and IFP's life easier, go for it.
Yeah, so let's talk about the next cognitive function, the next process, accuracy, technically called introverted thinking. This is used by all TPs, so as a strength, ISTPs, INTPs, ESTPs, ENTPs. And I will say this about accuracy. I think, this is my perspective, that is one of the most difficult processes when it's used as a strength to buy for. This is my perspective.
Yeah, it's probably true.
I think because accuracy people tend to do a lot of research, and they really want something that has precision and it's really well done. And so they've done way more research than you have on anything possible that they might like. So I think that's a little bit of a challenge. I don't know if you want to give some commentary on this, or if you'd agree to that. She's an accuracy user. So that's
I would agree to that. I think that's probably true.
So, but anyway, long story short, if you are buying something for somebody that this is one of their front seats, either driver or co-pilot, a lot of things like gadgetry. So I think like in general, the principle is precision instruments, whatever that looks like as a principle, whether it's technical precision instruments or physical precision instruments. I think that's what accuracy people love. So things like handheld tech gadgetry, I can't say that word, gadgetry, pocket DJ, GPS, like if you're getting somebody something like where they're doing hikes or something and they love, or somebody's like a fisherman in your life and they want to know the depth of the water and where the fish are and which, the GPS location of the best place to fish on a lake. That's something that I think, like, for example, maybe an STP might like, that's really into fishing, just as an example. Tickets to a favorite comedian or box set of a favorite TV show. Often comedy is something that accuracy people love, absurd comedy in particular. Books on machines, advanced math, formal logic, radical honesty. And if it's a romantic partner, a GPS coordinates of the first date on cufflinks or a necklace, something that kind of harkens back to something in more of a, I don't know if it was the digital right word, digital way, or in a precision way of something that would resonate, I think, with a lot of accuracy people.
Yeah, because it's like geeky, but also it's like accurate.
It's kind of
accurate. It's also love.
It's also kind of like, that kind of makes your heart strings.
It's accurate love.
Yeah.
You've never done that for me, by the way. Just FYI.
I didn't think that you would like that. That's like, I don't know. Just
I put it on. I put it on the list.
I know, but still.
Okay.
Well, these aren't just for you. These are.
All right. It's all a ruse. These are all just suggestions for Christmas gifts for Joel to give to me. All right. So, because it is hard to shop for accuracy.
I'm telling you, man.
That's why I say actually go for the Harmony in the back seat.
Yeah.
Because it's sometimes easier. All right. So the 10-year-old and 3-year-old process for FJs. It's a 10-year-old process for IFJs. And the 3-year-old process for EFJs. And again, it's still about tools for optimization. What do they do in their life and what will make their life easier? High quality shears for the hairstylist, high quality running shoes for the runner. Like, get them a tool that makes their life easier and give them a tool that will optimize the experience. Also, our 10-year-old and 3-year-old tend to be very playful. So things like the deluxe edition of a Scrabble game. I don't know an IFJ in my life that doesn't enjoy Scrabble. So something like I like Scrabble. I think Scrabble's fun.
I just sighed. I didn't say a word.
I know, but you brought up liking Monopoly, so clearly Scrabble's the superior game. Anyway, so deluxe edition of Scrabble games, or objects with need-based humor, because again, a lot of times accuracy is about absurd humor. That's also a thing that delights it. So, things like I'm trying to think of examples. I actually I had a cup or a mug. This actually, a lot of this stuff comes from our gift giving guide, and there was like a picture of a mug with like like something like Mondays or something to that effect. And,
I know what the one Freudian mug you got.
Oh yeah.
What was it called? The Freudian sip, something like this.
Yeah, the Freudian sip. And it's like when you say one thing but mean your mother. And it was very funny. It's a Freudian sip cup. So things like that. Need-based humor, like quirky humor, a lot of times are just right up the alley for the 10-year-old and 3-year-old accuracy processes.
Yeah. Again, these are starting points. You're going to need to make your own list from these. These are good starting points to know how these processes work, to get yourself kind of on the right track, and then you're going to tailor these to the people in your life, obviously.
Yeah, these are I mean, obviously, we're not taking into account like a million other things that go into personality.
Interests. And this is personality based, and you have to factor in interests,
age,
desire, age, generation,
weirdness.
Yeah. Your relationship to the person.
Yeah.
Obviously. So if
the
you're
appropriateness.
Cufflink, like you've done. This is a good starting point for you to be able to pick the perfect gift.
Yeah. Don't get cufflinks with the the GPS coordinates for like
your mailman.
Yeah, or like yeah.
Or like where you met. Here's where you delivered my mail. The exact GPS location.
Yeah.
So those are the two thinking cognitive functions, decision-making functions. We're going to talk about the two feeling functions next.
Well, maybe we will. Okay, there we go. All right, so the final two cognitive functions are, like Joel mentioned, the feeling functions. The first one is extroverted feeling, or what we call harmony. It is the driver and co-pilot process for FJs. Driver for EFJs, co-pilot for IFJs. And once again, actually harmony is in some ways relatively easy to shop for because it's all about pampering and spoiling if at all possible. So a spa day gift certificate. Words of affirmation gifts like world's best dad coffee mugs. Basically, harmony people are always looking to know that somebody actually appreciates all the work that they do. And most of us don't, actually. Most of us do not appreciate as much work and time and effort that harmony puts into things. So things that express appreciation are really huge. Specialty soaps, candles, name brand items. Once again, kind of going back to extrovert sensing, harmony also likes status. Status is good. So handbags, watches, clothing, things that show that they, that they care about themselves and they care about their appearance and they care about how people are receiving them. For extroverted sensing, it's being very aware of how other people are observing them. For extroverted feeling or harmony, it's more about making sure that people know that they care about how they're coming across to other people. So one is an awareness, one is like an active desire to be pleasing to others. So a lot of times those are gifts that really go over well with harmony. And especially SFJs, I think, and NFJs are less interested in the brand thing, but they also still like brands. Anyway, harmony is usually attracted to those sorts of things. And as a 10-year-old or 3-year-old process, as a 10-year-old, it's a 10-year-old process for ETPs. And it is a 3-year-old process for ITPs. So take them out to dinner, a movie, connect with them. It's an experience of having a one-to-one connection for a lot of TPs. People don't know this about TPs, but oftentimes they don't feel that connected to other people. Even if they're charismatic or really enjoy like spending time or are funny, connection is oftentimes a struggle. So just taking the time, like quality time to connect with them is oftentimes a really big gift. A day of fishing, an evening playing Dungeons & Dragons, treat them to a day that they'll love, even if you're not super into whatever they're doing. And coffee mugs, t-shirts, and advertisements for not really liking people very much. This is one that most TPs will be like, thanks for giving me, like it's the opposite of the connection thing. You know that phrase, what supports us, what crosses us supports us? It's the same deal. It's like, I don't connect with the people very much, so I want to connect with loved ones, but everybody else I'm going to be spiky for and leave me alone. So those are usually things that go over well with TPs.
That's so true.
All right. All right.
We get on question.
Joseph says, the mug that says, give me coffee, nobody gets hurt in the guide. Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Let's see. And somebody said, I'd love that. What, a coffee mug or a t-shirt or advertisement that says they don't really like people very much? If that's the case, I know, right? Yeah. How can you not? All right. So let's do the final cognitive function, authenticity, technically called introverted feeling. This is the driver for IFPs and the co-pilot for EFPs. Why don't you take authenticity since you're an authenticity user?
Yeah, so basically this is about identity or expression often. For authenticity, it's about what's inner alignment, what's expressive, what feels good to express your identity or to express yourself in a creative way. So artistic tools, canvases, cameras, camera lenses, musical instruments, these can often be ways that people can express themselves that have this as one of their functions. Artistic classes, this is a great idea. Painting, photography classes, maybe a new MP3 player, a really good set of headphones. These headphones I'm using right now are like really expensive quality. They're made out of wood and they have a really awesome sound to them. And I got these and I'm an authenticity person. So something to help you really get in a sense with the music you love or things of this nature. Leather-bound journal or high quality pen. So these are some of the ideas if this is a strength for someone as their driver or their co-pilot.
I got you those headphones.
You did.
Was it birthday?
I think it was.
That's right.
I love them.
All right.
I still love them.
All right.
And now I put it back in.
10-year-old and 3-year-old?
Oh yeah, 10-year-old and 3-year-old. So, oh, by the way, so the 10-year-old, 3-year-old are all, for everybody that's a TJ. So all TJs in the Myers-Briggs system are going to have authenticity either as their 10-year-old or 3-year-old.
I was just going to say, somebody asked a very good question. Yeah. What if an ISFP doesn't like art? It seems like everywhere I look, ISFP is all about art and music. There are certain ISFPs that are not actually as overtly into art. Joel's father, who's an ISFP, he actually was an art major, but ever since then, he's just kind of abandoned art. Like as he's gotten older, he's gotten more into conviction, because ISFPs can go more towards conviction than art.
But they have something that's their art.
Usually.
Something is their expression in the world, I think. It may not be painting or photography. I think through his nonprofit that he runs, that's how he's expressing himself.
Exactly.
So that's become almost like his art project.
Yeah,
even though it's
it
not
has.
about painting or photography.
Yeah, usually there's an art project of some sort going on, but it might not be easy to buy for. So what I do for him, and anybody who, by the way, is of a certain type that it goes kind of counterintuitive to their type, they're not like a they're just not a stereotypical or archetypical example. That's oftentimes when I go to the 3-year-old. And for Joel's dad, I almost always get him a tool that would make his life easier.
So that's the effectiveness would be his 3-year-old process. So you got him this really cool, it was like a Leatherman tool. And it was like 3 years ago, right? He carries it with him everywhere. He loves it because it makes his life simple. It plays on that 3-year-old process of effectiveness where he's out and about. He runs a camp, a youth camp. So he's out fixing things, and he often needs a quick tool, and he keeps it in his pocket. He can pull it out. It's got pliers and scissors and a knife and all these different aspects, almost like a Swiss Army knife, but it's a little bit better than that. It's got some extra things on it. He still raves about it.
Yeah.
He'll still pull it out and be like, I still have my Leatherman tool. He'll rave about it because it solves so many problems for his little 3-year-old process.
And they run a youth camp, and every year they have something they call snow camp. And so he's outside in the snow and ice, like for 2 months out of the year, like helping kids go do different activities and running snowmobiles and all that stuff. So this year, and I'm about to give away the gift I got for your dad, but I'm pretty sure he would never watch this in a million years. So I think
he's not watching.
Yeah, there's no way he'd watch this, so I'm good. All right, nobody squeal. I got him grips, like ice grips for the bottom of his shoes that just very easily go on the bottom of shoes. So I never get him anything that's complicated or complex. I get him something that's like super easy to use and will make his life infinitely easier. So that's usually the direction I go with people, like with an ISFP that's not into an obvious art. And he is into art. It's just a different, it's like, what am I supposed to get him? Like, like a new building for his ranch, right? So people who aren't obviously archetypically their type, I oftentimes go to the back seat and ask what would make their life easier. Yeah. Anyway, I just wanted to mention that.
No, that's fine. So we're talking about TJs. These are going to be the people that have authenticity as either their 10-year-old or their 3-year-old. And oftentimes they like expression just as well. And I think the word here to shift is from art to expression. I think that might help you. If you have somebody in your life that's using authenticity, you're like, they're not artistic, they probably are expressing themselves in some way. So where are they expressing themselves? And here's where maybe music is somewhere, a person that uses authenticity in the backseat of their car, driving music, inspirational music, mood setting music, house techno, maybe Enya, something like this. You got to check in because music is one of those things where it's got taste to it. People have different preferences. So you have to check in and kind of know what you're doing when you go to music route, but that's an idea for that type of person. Also potentially for someone here, a subscription to a music service like Pandora or Spotify, or maybe Apple Music, something like this. Mm-hmm. Biographies, oftentimes authenticity people, when they're using authenticities, go ahead.
No, I actually burped.
Oh, I thought you had forgot something. People oftentimes want to read about, they want to read about other people because oftentimes authenticity, when it's in the backseat of the 3-year-old, you can get a sense of how someone else did something for how you're going to do something in your life. And then obviously visual art depicting strength or getting things accomplished, I guess strength. I guess that's the word I'll use, strength.
Yeah, well, I remember my brother, one of his favorite gifts that he ever got was like a samurai that had this like cool pattern. It was like a granite samurai that was an image or a personification of strength, but it was still an art piece.
It's almost like symbology.
Yeah, it's like symbology of strength. Yeah. Those kinds of things I think usually go really well with extroverted thinking, TJs. So we've got some questions. We're winding up, so I'm going to take some of those. We're
actually not winding down. We're going to, from here, if you just joined us, we're going to complete this part of this. We're going to briefly talk about our profiler training certification course. Then we're going to open up for questions.
Yes.
So you ask a bunch of questions around type, around the gift giving stuff, or around profiler training. We're just going to open it up.
Absolutely.
To the wild, wild west of questions.
Right. So what if an INTP writer shares their feelings and inner thoughts with an INFP in the form of erotic story? I think that would be really cool. I think that would be amazing and awesome as long as you have that kind of relationship with the person. If Joel gave me erotic stories about us, I think that would be amazing. And I think it would really awesome. What about you? If I wrote erotic stories for you, you'd be down with that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
So just make sure you have that kind of relationship with them. Make sure the relationship
Again,
is
not your mailman.
not your
Unless you have that relationship with your mailman.
Yes. Unless
And then by all means,
But that
slip
could
them a
be-
letter.
that's right. That could be rocky territory. So, buyer beware.
Let's hold off on all these questions. Let's talk briefly. I do want to get all these questions, and I know you're eager to get to all of them.
No, that's fine. We can hold them too.
If you have questions, I'd love you to start putting those in, but I don't want to take time now and then we delay them and then we get off kilter. So I'm going to keep us on track.
Yeah.
Go ahead. You have
Okay,
something?
no, I was just going to say, and also for anybody who's watching that can't see the slides right now, maybe you're on Facebook Live, maybe you're watching it without, just with audio only, all of these slides will be available.
Yeah.
So don't worry about it. The slides will be available and posted.
I'll get it done as soon as I can after the webinar. In fact, I'll do that before I edit the actual video and upload that.
And they could find them at Facebook.
I'll probably put them right below. If you're watching on Facebook, I'll put them right below Facebook. And if you're on the webinar, we'll go ahead and email those to you.
There you go. All right, so you're good to go. All right.
All right, so start sending in your questions because we're going to get to those next.
Yes.
We're going to take probably about 5 minutes here and just talk about profiler training because right now we're in the enrollment period of our 2018 class for profiler training certification course.
Right.
And this is a class we open every year, and tomorrow enrollment ends.
I have a segue slide that was going to be really super slick.
Take two.
Take two. So
Ignore everything I said. No, actually,
No.
listen to what I just said.
Yeah.
But put it after what she's about to say.
How do you know the personality types of the
Asynchronous.
people in your life? How do you know? So you've got the algorithm down for buying the perfect gift. If you know the cognitive functions or the various cognitive functions in the car model, right? Or the cognitive function stack of the personality types, you know the algorithm, but how do you know the personality types of the people in your life? Your loved ones, your coworkers, your acquaintances. Unless they tell you, you don't necessarily know unless you have become a qualified profiler. So what
That
we
was a
wanted to do.
great segue
I
slide.
know, isn't it beautiful?
How did I just screw that
I
up?
don't know. I was really proud of that segue.
That was
It's
good.
cool. All right.
It's cool. Let's keep going.
Transparent marketing. All right. So we wanted to introduce the Personality Hacker Profiler Training Certification 2.0, which is a full immersion interactive experience developed to help you cultivate, calibrate, and perfect your profiling skills so you can use it to go to the next level in your career, relationships, and personal development journey. Now, we've already introduced this at the beginning of enrollment. We had a webinar a week and a half ago at the beginning of enrollment, but we were at the end of enrollment. All right. Tomorrow at midnight ends enrollment, and you cannot join the Profiler Training Certification course for 1 full year. So if you don't get in on it now, then you won't be able to sign up or register until December of 2018, which seems like a really long ways away to me.
It'll
So-
go fast, but still, it's a year away.
It will go ridiculously
Depending
fast.
on your age, the older you are, probably the faster it goes.
But I don't really want to think about how time is speeding by because I just hit 40. So that's what's going on for me. So Profiler Training is an immersive experience, even more immersive than it has ever been in the past. And in large part because we have a thriving community and a really amazing community manager that named Kimberly Ruffner, who has helped us turn it into not just a, it's not like other information courses. This is an immersive experience. It's got a lot of different elements that are designed to help you learn in you're not just learning French, you're going to France basically with this immersion program. And that was intended desire.
That's a metaphor, by the way.
It's
We're not
a
actually
metaphor.
going to France.
We're not going to France. So somebody said, was she the one in your last webinar? She is. Kimberly is the one that was in our last webinar. So we just want to remind you what you get in the course. It's a 40+ session course. We cover dichotomies, cognitive functions, the types, the temperaments, what we call the polarities, which are how the cognitive functions relate to each other. We talk about the defensive strategies for each type, accurate live passive profiling. You get a 10-month syllabus to guide your learning. You get a rich, vibrant community of fellow students to help you sharpen the saw. And we already have 60 students, a little over 60 at this point. A lot of people are on Facebook right now in the new they are new additions to that community. And we also are adding people to Slack, which we can talk about in a moment. You get membership to private Slack communities, and you also you get to be part of a mentorship program where we have mentors that have gone through the previous years, right? Basically alumni that have gotten certified that help mentor your process through this. So what's nice is that when you get on now, we've been doing this for about 4 or 5 years. I think it's been 5 years now that we've been doing the profiler training course.
Doing it, yeah.
And so we have like this stack of certified profilers and these people who have gone through the process before you that can be mentors and help guide your experience. So it's been really amazing. And of course, you have eligibility to become a certified profiler. And that is where we pull our profilers from. Like the people who do consultations for Personality Hacker, we get 100% of people through profiler training. So if you've ever considered doing something like this professionally, our strong recommendation is that you come through the profiler training group because that's where we pull all of our certified profilers. And you don't know this from the last webinar because we just added it, but we added a bunch of bonuses. So here are the cool bonuses you get. You get a 1-hour consultation with a certified profiler. This is intended to help you figure out your type as you go. It's really hard to calibrate the content unless you know your best fit type. So we help guide you through that process. We go through a certified profiler that does a consultation with you, and then also the community helps go through the process as well. If it's like a different type than you were expecting, or if you have some questions around it, then everybody's there to help you go through the process so that you can calibrate the information correctly against your best fit type.
And that happens like within the first, I would say probably 30 to 60 days after you sign up, depending on how many people we have and your schedule. It's really cool because you get a sense of what on the other side of the field, what that will look like whenever you go through the entire training of how you're going to show up and be able to profile people. So it gives you almost out of the gate, not only are you getting your type accurately, getting a consultation to help you discover your type and make sure you're dialed in on that, you get a sense of what the entire experience is like right out of the gate, which is really fun.
Yeah, and it gets you connected almost immediately with the community as well, which is a major piece of this because there's nothing more fun than learning with a bunch of like-minded people who are into the same stuff as you're into. And we have incredible people who go through profiler training. Like we mentioned in the last webinar, we have somebody who's a hostage negotiator who's using this for hostage negotiation. We have a lot of coaches, a lot of people who do life coaching and business coaching. We just have like a really cool stable of human beings, and it's a very high quality group of people who are super serious about their personal development as well. So it's just like a really neat community that I am very proud that we have helped foster. We also announced the 16 Avatars program as a bonus. This was originally a little over $800 tuition when we first ran it. It gives you 16 recorded sessions of people of every type that I've done. They're recorded profiling sessions so that you hear how the different types show up in a live profiling session or consultation, and also 16 supplemental webinars dedicated to each one of the types. Now they're supplemental because you also have the 16 types in the core content, but these are supplemental to talk about profiling and other elements of the 16 types that just kind of flesh out the concepts.
So you get to watch these and listen, or you get to listen to these and hear Antonia profiling somebody live over the course of 45 minutes to an hour and a half, and hear how each type shows up in the middle of a profiling session. So all 16 types are represented here. And this is just something that augments. This isn't even the core content. This augments and helps in addition to the core content for you, as you can listen through and you can start to do type guesses. You can start to see all the different nuances of the way types show up. And this helps accelerate your learning because you're seeing it in practice, not just in the information you're gathering, but you're seeing it applied in real time, and you're able to take notes and even learn faster. That's why this is really important.
Yeah, and it helps you get really good at both what we call passive and active profiling. Passive profiling is when you're sitting back, you're observing somebody, you're just kind of watching their mannerisms and behavior, hearing how they're talking. So you passive profile by just observation, and then you active profile by actually asking people questions. And the goal of profiler training, and then we tell people for this from the beginning, is that we want to get them to conversational profiling. Conversational profiling means you're not actually asking them any like dichotomous questions. You're not asking forced choice. You're not going to use it this or this. You're not just a human version of a test. You actually are asking them leading questions so that as they talk, they're revealing how their mind works. And the goal is to get to a place where it's fully conversational. You ask one leading question and then they're just off to the races. And as you're hearing them and listening for them, you're asking calibrating questions to try to figure out why their behavior is as it is. But you get to a point where you can really hear people's personality types come out in their conversation.
And what's great about conversational profiling is when you master this, now you're sitting on an airplane next to somebody And you can be profiling somebody without them even knowing that you're doing it. You just be talking to them saying, hey, how are you doing? Ask about their family, ask about their life, ask about what they're interested in. And here you're getting information. You're basically in the process of typing them in a profiling way with all the things we're going to teach you with the core content, what to look for, and then just the nuances of the language and the way to use language and talk to somebody just in a casual conversation to get bits and pieces of their type. And this is a really powerful tool. Can you imagine this at the workplace, in your family, around the Thanksgiving dinner, around the holidays, or just in your daily life as you interact with people, being able to conversationally profile them and figure out, oh, this is a harmony person I'm working with. I totally see this. Or this is an authenticity person or an effectiveness person. You start to get a sense of the person, who you're engaging with, and you can contextualize your communication. And this is just a really amazing, I think, leverage point in your life as you move through life, not just for understanding how to use this, but also just in general, being able to interact with people in a really profound way.
You can't use it for evil, though. When
We'll
you do conversational profiling and you're able to profile people, you can't use it for evil.
Obviously, we're not talking to anybody on this tonight.
Yeah. That's just.
But in case some evil person gets a hold of this recording, we are talking to you. You can't use it for evil.
All right.
All right. Do not answer questions yet. Let's get through this and get all the questions. I know you're eager to do this.
I know. Okay. All right. So you'll also gain access to other elements, the official Profiler Training private community. We have officially 167 members and counting. A VIP invitation to all future Profiler Training live events. We do one once a year that is a live event where people fly in. We do 2 days of intense content and we connect with each other, and it is always a blast. And you hang out with us and we hang out with you, and it's always my
favorite part is movie night.
Yeah, we do movie night.
We get popcorn and we clear all the chairs out in the conference room we're using, and everybody brings their blankets and pillows down. We all set up.
We're usually in pajamas.
Sometimes in pajamas.
Yeah.
And then we set up a movie and we'll watch a movie and we'll pause it at key points and we'll be typing different characters in the movie as we go through. And it's really just a fun experience for us. It's almost like you're immersed for 2 days in typology things, like just completely and totally.
Yeah.
We'll bring guests in for you to do profiling sessions where we can walk around and help you contextualize the way that you are profiling somebody, the different nuances, some of the challenges are coming up. Hey, what's going on here? Joel, Antonia, Kimberly, anybody on the team, can you help me with this little nuance here? I'm having trouble determining this is an introvert or extrovert. And we have live sessions like that. And then we talk about all the different cognitive functions that we just illustrated in this, and we have you embody all of those at the live event.
Yeah. You also get access to our monthly Q&A calls, which have so far over 70 hours of recorded calls because we've been doing it for every month for 5 years.
Those are time-stamped if you need to go back and find certain key elements of content you're looking for.
Credible peer review and feedback for calibrating your profiling skills. That's the point of the community, and a lot of alumni stay in the community. So you get access to people who have been doing this for a while, which is really great. And of course, you'll have the opportunity to become a Personality Hacker certified profiler. All right, so enrollment for this class ends tomorrow. So today's the 8th, Monday the 18th. Enrollment ends Tuesday the 19th. And then we immediately do our orientation on Wednesday the 20th. And again, if you don't sign up now, then you have to wait 1 whole year until next year. And so if this is something you've been thinking about, we strongly recommend that you give it a go. It's been very powerful for people so far who are already in the class. People enrolled on the 7th, and I think some of them are already halfway through the content, even though we have a syllabus that has a recommended learning syllabus from January to December. There are some people who are already halfway through the course and they just got the content. So yeah, people are eager. It's a great community. Lots of people are super into learning. So we strongly recommend that if this is a thing for you, then you sign on. You sign on now.
Yeah, so when you enroll, basically you're gonna get all the information you're gonna get access to the content immediately. Information on the orientation. If you can't make that, we'll have it recorded. You can watch it later. We'd love to have you live so you can get calibrated to what you're going to be doing. The holidays are coming, and then after the holidays, we're going to start scheduling those one-on-one type calls where you can basically get profiled and make sure you calibrating your type. Make sure you're really dialed into what your personality type is, and even if you really know what it is, you just go through the experience of that with one of our profilers to get a sense of what it looks like when you're fully through the program and you've been learning all the stuff that we teach.
Yep. So just one more reminder, enrollment ends tomorrow. December the 19th, and our class orientation is on Wednesday, December 20th. So get in while you can. At midnight tomorrow, Eastern time, it ends. The enrollment period ends. It'll just be the beginning for everybody who's enrolled in the class. It's just the beginning of a really amazing experience that will last you a lifetime, really. And I say that because that's the feedback we've gotten. For a lot of people, it's a game changer. It's like literally life altering. So if that's something that you've been, again, kicking around, enrollment ends tomorrow. So we highly recommend that you get on the stick.
We would really love for you to be a part of this class this year in 2018. If this is something you've been thinking about doing, enrollment ends. Again, you have another year next year if you want to do it next year. Not trying to put a lot of pressure on you, but we'd love to have you this year. I think it's kind of one of those things like, if not now, when? And if you're able to do it, if you're excited about it, if this is something you've been thinking about for a while, go ahead and join. And you're going to be part of an alumni and a group of people that support each other. We still have alumni from like 5 years ago that come to our Q&As, that show up to our live events, that are here for mentorships, that are part of the Facebook community and Slack community. It's kind of like when you get in, you can't let it go. It just gets its hooks in you and you feel like you want to be a part of it for a long time. So we'd love for you to join us this year in the 2018 class. So if it's something you're interested in, we have a link here for you to go to, and then we're going to open up for questions. Just go to personalityhacker.com/profiler training. You can learn all about the program, the different tuition plans, and all the different details about what's in the program if you'd like more information.
One of the questions we got was from Joe. Can you attend the live get-together virtually if travel's not an option? Unfortunately, it's a live experience. Like, that's the point of it, is to physically be in each other's presence. But we also do a virtual event every year as well. So if you're a person who's like living overseas or just can't get to the actual physical live event, we also do a summit, a virtual summit every year in behalf of the people who just can't physically make it. So Thank you for the question.
So let's open up for some questions. You can ask type questions. We're going to do this for as long as we can, as we have a babysitter tonight with Piper, our daughter. We'll do live, questions right now on the air for type, or if you have profiler training questions or questions about gift giving, stuff that we just talked about, please feel free to do that. If you're watching on Facebook Live, there's no way we can engage with you there. If you've got questions, you'd have to come over to the webinar to be able to ask your questions to the GoTo webinar control panel. And just go ahead and type your question in there. We'll be able to read those and answer them.
Yep. So one person asked before about the gift giving guide. What's a Leatherman tool? A Leatherman tool is kind of like a Swiss Army knife. It's pretty high quality. It's got a lot of features to it. I recommend, if you've got somebody who's an FP or a TJ in your life, I recommend considering.
They're really cool.
Yep. All right. And I know that there were other questions. Hold on. Somebody said, what about an ISTJ that's into politics? And what would you get for them? The recommendation on somebody who's into politics is find out what their political affiliation is. And I've gotten like political things for your dad who's an ISFP, but it's kind of, there are some weird similarities between ISFPs and ISTJs. And so I've gotten him like photo books of political figures that he admires, almost like a life in, those photography books of a life in that person's, or a collection of their life in photographs. Yeah. So things like that I think would be probably pretty good.
Also, we might have somebody's hand raised that wants to talk live on the air. I'm not sure if anybody has their hand raised.
I think that's been raised since the beginning.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
If you do want to have us unmute and talk live and ask your question live, if you have to need more context for it or whatever, feel free to do that. Looks like Albert's hand is raised, but I don't know if that was an accident, Albert, or not.
I think that's been raised the whole time.
Okay, so you probably clicked that at the very beginning.
All right. And we can also, I think somebody at the very beginning said, I'm an INTJ, and what can I do to develop my SE or get stronger at my inferior process of extroverted sensing? I'm going to go ahead and just answer that one now.
Yeah.
And if you guys have any type-based questions, like, take the opportunity right now. Like, we're here and we're live, and it's not that, especially if you're like a podcast listener, it's not that often that you get to talk back to us. So please feel free to ask us any questions you have. For the INTJ that asked, how do you get better at extroverted sensing? I'll give you our philosophy on this, and you can take this how you choose. I don't think that there is leverage in actively developing the inferior or 3-year-old process unless you have already mastered your co-pilot or auxiliary process. So for an INTJ, I think the highest leverage thing you can do is master and develop extroverted thinking. Now, in that way, it is going to force you to get into the outside world, into the extroverted space, and you are automatically going to be doing more extroverted sensing because you're now in an outward space, and extroverted sensing is part of taking in the territory of what's going on around you here and now. So I would focus on extroverted thinking. The other thing is extroverted sensing is oftentimes about taking care of your health. It's about being able to be present and in the moment. And so I would probably do some presence meditation, things that just allow you to take in the atmosphere as it is. This is not an intent to develop it. It's an intent to give it some time and attention, because if you don't give it time and attention, it will demand it from you in other ways. And usually that's in a sensory indulgent experience. So a lot of time INJs struggle with not wanting to be very physically indulgent, like eat too much or drink too much or sit around and do nothing. The goal is to not allow your 3-year-old process to force you to like eat all the cookies in the cookie jar, but rather to be able to be present and to be able to take in the information in real time. Study people's body language, study how you're coming across to other people. Don't work on developing it so that it's a skill, but work on making sure that it's not hijacking you. And one of the things that extroverted thinking will do, if you develop that process, your co-pilot or auxiliary, it will force you to think in terms of how do I come across to other people? Because that's an effectiveness thing, right? It's trying to become more effective, more persuasive, trying to get its point across better. And that means it will help you, encourage you to check in with how other people are experiencing you, how you're showing up. Effectiveness also wants to be able to, be streamlined and get the most energetic bang for the buck. And one of the best things to do is exercise, right? Get more energy through your body through exercise, which will again force you into that 3-year-old process of extroverted sensing. So in my opinion, the highest leverage thing to do is to go to the co-pilot or auxiliary and then make sure you're giving that 3-year-old some time, but not necessarily developing it at the cost of focusing on skill development in your co-pilot.
Yeah, I think oftentimes we all want to rush through development and growth, right? There's a lot of work that we can do with the just a few of the understandings that we have around personality type, just a couple key areas. You can almost spend a lifetime mastering those parts of you and really growing those parts of you and focusing on them. And oftentimes I think we as humans, especially us that are into personal growth, if you're watching this, you probably are into personal growth, you're eager to rush and like, I want to grow everything all at once. And it's such a process of life. I think that over your lifetime, you can grow all the different parts of you, but it's one of those things you don't want to rush it. You want to spend the time growing all of you in an appropriate time frame.
So the next person asks, how does an INTP get out of a loop or spiral? So what a loop is when your driver or dominant cognitive function and your 10-year-old or tertiary function are in cahoots with each other and are in a loop. And they get in a loop because they live in, or they operate in the same space, or what's technically called an attitude. It's either introverted within the self or extroverted in the outside world. For an INTP, since they're an introvert, that means their driver or dominant is introverted, and that means their loop is introverted. So it's all happening within themselves. And every type manifests their loop a little differently. For INTPs, it's oftentimes an inner defensiveness. It's a desire to stay inside the self and to always be right and to not have to take in new information and to not have to get out of their comfort zone. Like there's a couple different ways the loop can manifest, but it's always like a reluctance to get into the outside world. So the best way to do a pattern interrupt for the INTP loop is to get in the outside world. It's to get into the co-pilot or auxiliary process of extroverted intuition or exploration. Go do something new. Go meet somebody new. Go try a food you never tried before. Get out of yourself. Go do something that's novel and exhilarating. Force the little introverted loop to just like continue to get inside of its cave. Force itself out of its cave, and it will be enough of a pattern interrupt. And if your exploration isn't doing it, it means you're not doing it enough. A lot of INTPs think that they can just do exploration like with research or with reading new material or books or in the comfort of their own home. And that is not accurate. You have to get outside. You have to explore the outside world because that's where new patterns are observed. That's where new information is observed. And that's where you're going to get your best insights. That's where things are really going to start connecting for you. So if you're in a loop, get outside. Go try food you've never tried before. Maybe something that even disgusts you. Go to some place you've never gone before. One of the things I used to do when I was younger and I just was not getting enough exploration is I lived in the city of Portland, Oregon at the time, and I would drive to a place that was not intentionally, but it was a very complicated place to navigate. It's called the West Hills. And I used to intentionally get myself lost. And then I would see if I could just navigate my way back out just through pattern recognition. It's things like that, like go get lost, go try something you've never tried before, go make your life a novelty, and you'll get out of the loop.
I took an improv acting class like 3 years ago, and there was an INTP in my improv acting class, and he was really a joyful person. He was very he was very INTP. He had a very INTP presence, but he became almost the love of the class. Like everybody loved this guy because he was in his extroverted intuition process, that exploration. He was there in class and he had just said, you know what, I'm going to accept whatever's coming. I'm going to yes and it. I'm going to express myself. And he was having a blast. And he actually said the reason he did it was for personal growth reasons. He wasn't even somebody tied to us at Personality Hacker, just a guy I met. He had read some books about getting outside of himself, and he joined this class, and man, it was amazing. He said it helped him so much. He was doing improv and he was going to do some stand-up training. And he said that he was practicing going up and meeting people and talking to people, strangers. He was totally getting himself out of that loop that he had explained to me he was in, basically, where he was staying at home. He wasn't going out. He was getting depressed. He was getting lonely and sad. And this really helped him. So there's probably other things you can do activity-wise too, that if you're looking for maybe frameworks, like a class to join, like an improv class, or learning a skill that gets you around people and pushes you into something that you've never done before, that'll give you some kind of a template to do it, something that you can look toward on a regular basis that'll help you as a starting point. Sometimes it can be just frightening going out and doing that off the top of your head, basically.
Yep. All right, next question is typing kids. I imagine this can be quite a challenge depending on the age or phase. Some dimensions are likely easier to see than others, but have you any tips? One of the first things that develops in our personality type, according to the Myers-Briggs system, is our dominant or driver cognitive function. So most of the time when I'm trying to type children who are under the age of about 10 or 11, is I'm mostly looking for that driver process. Excuse me. And
this is not an exact science.
It's not. I mean, it's hard to do with adults, right? So it's not like you'll know, but that's usually what I'm looking for. And if you can find the person's driver or dominant process, you've got 3 of the 4 letters. So you might not know their type, but if you can get that dominant or driver process down, you've got 3/4 of the equation down. And then as you observe them age, and oftentimes we really start exploring our co-pilot or auxiliary process in our teens. That's usually when sometimes we almost go completely over to it. I've known extroverts that profile or type out as introverts when they're high schoolers, and vice versa, because they're really getting into that auxiliary or co-pilot process, which is the opposite attitude or introverted or extroverted expression from the driver or dominant. So my recommendation is to look for the driver, and then as they age, start peeking at what the auxiliary or co-pilot process could be. Is it possible to use functions that are not part of your cognitive function stack? I'm an INFJ and I have an ISTJ as a roommate, and I found myself adapting to her way of thinking and looking at things from a TE point of view.
We have all 8 functions accessible to us. It's part of us. I mean, everybody has access to this. Basically, when you look at the car model, we're talking about your driver and your co-pilot, your 2 preferred cognitive functions in your cognitive function stack. We do have access to all of that. Our personalities aren't just limited to 4 cognitive functions, the 2 front seat, the 2 back seat. So yeah, I think it's very possible for you to have, depending on your upbringing, the family you're raised in, your age, your experience, the type of work you do, the type of school you went to, the type of people you live with or are surrounded by, often that can have you accessing different parts of your personality that aren't part of the car model, basically, we talk about here at Personality Hacker.
There are different models, like John Beeb's model of the shadow processes, that talk about different ways that your shadow processes, the 4 functions that are not in your stack, can influence you. And those are very interesting. I personally think that our functions that are not the 4 core functions that are in our stack, I think the other 4 are kind of a mixed bag. I think, like Joel mentioned, it depends on what your influencers have been throughout your life. I also think that as an INFJ, with using introverted intuition or perspectives as your driver or dominant process, you're probably going to absorb a lot of different ways of thinking and try things on for size. It's very common for people to do when they're used to swapping into other people's, perspective, or into their perspective, and kind of trying on how those people see things. And you might absorb a little bit of how they do things as well. that is different. Being able to use them and access the other functions is different than having those functions influence you on a day-to-day basis. It's different than having them be a primary lens through which to look through life, because our minds are wired to take in and understand and find interest in certain things in kind of a cost of specialization way, like in a singular way. And they're also wired to make decisions or make should statements or evaluate in kind of a specific, peculiar way. And the reason why you have what's technically called a tertiary and inferior, what we call a 10-year-old and 3-year-old, is because these functions are not in silos. They're actually part of what's called a polarity. A polarity is two functions that are sort of two sides of the same coin. So where perspectives or introverted intuition is, its polar opposite of extroverted sensing or sensation will always be. Think of it as like a coin, two sides of the same coin that's weighted to come up most often for an INFJ as perspectives. But sensation is always going to be there. You can't separate them fully. So it's really that our minds are wired primarily to take in information and judge that information in very specific ways, but then they get sort of luggage that comes with them, or they have sort of these tourists that come up with them, but they're not getting as much airtime, so they don't have the same level of strength as the dominant and auxiliary or driver and co-pilot. So yeah, you have access to all 8, but 4 of them are going to be highly influential in your life. It's almost like they have you as opposed to you having them, if that makes sense.
And we kind of go back to what I just said right before that too, right before this question, where a lot of people were like, okay, I want to start like dealing with or growing or focusing on those 4 processes that aren't in my car, in the car model here, in my primary cognitive function stack. And again, it's like maybe you're at a place in your life where you're able to do that, but most people have so much, almost like a lifetime of work, I know I do, of just working on the cognitive functions that we already have looked at. For like me as an ENFP, I've got 4 that I'm working on all the time in my personal growth. I'll look at the other 4, but I'm not worried about that from a personal growth standpoint right now, because there's so much work to do in what I'm already focused on.
Yep. All right. Do you feel complete there?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
King says, hey, Jill and Antonia, just joined a few minutes ago. Coming up with the type profile is just the beginning, right? Would the program provide us with strategies and or tactics to build connection, rapport, or even help the profile use personal development? Yes. In fact, there's an entire module on rapport building and on getting into a flow of conversation with the other person. That's a major part of profiling. And so we have an entire segment on that. And I have noticed that everybody who becomes a certified profiler, every single one says they can't help but give personal development coaching at the end of the session. So yes, it does help you not just assist the person in finding their best fit type, because you're kind of like a Sherpa along the journey of them finding their best fit type. It not only allows or facilitates and enables you to be like that Sherpa, but also gives very high quality advice. Every single person I know that does profiling sessions says that they have to tack on 15 to 20 minutes at the end of their session to be able to give recommendations for becoming the best version of that type.
Yeah, and I would also say that the course is not designed as a personal growth course. So it's not for personal growth. It is designed to teach you a skill, and a very nuanced skill. You're basically learning an entire language and then the application of that language, which is profiling and all the cognitive functions and personality typing. And in the midst of that, you're going to get a spill off of personal growth. It's not a personal growth course, but often people that go through have so many ahas about themselves. And there's a lot of personal growth that comes from it, because you're having to learn a lot of new things about yourself and about how other people are wired. And you're going to use a lot of the people in your life, like family and friends, as your control to see the different types and how they show up. And in the midst of doing that, a lot of people have ahas. Oh, wow, no wonder my mom and I have the relationship we have. There's probably some healing I need to do here. So there's some personal growth that comes out of it. But again, it's not that it's designed for personal growth. I just want to be very clear to manage expectations. It is a program designed to teach a skill, and that is its core focus. And I think personal growth comes from that. And again, when you're in the community with the type of people that join profiler training, the type of community members you're going to be around, it is part of the personality hacker ethos. Mm-hmm. And in particular, the high level of people that are operating at this, learning this, are going to be very focused on personal growth. So we oftentimes talk about personal growth things. And so this is almost like a side benefit of being a part of the program.
Yeah, exactly. And we do go over, in one of the modules, we do go over healthy and unhealthy expressions of type. because that's part of what you need to know in order to profile accurately. You need to know how types can show up when they're in their less healthy states. So we do talk about that. And I think a lot of information that gets called from that ends up in profiling sessions to make recommendations for people to be as healthy as possible. So it's just, it's not designed as a coaching program, although we have one of those too, a profiler coaching program that's a supplement only available for people who've gone through profiler training. So we do have a coaching program that you can get if you're a profiler training student. And just profiler training itself usually helps facilitate a measure of growth and coaching.
Yeah, and also about the idea of building rapport and things. One of the things, so that's in the digital content that you get in your members area when you enroll. But we also, during the live event, will do an entire session around a lot of NLP techniques on mirroring, on getting into rapport in a physical way of mirroring someone's body language, of different ways that they're positioned and the way your voice cadence, the way you speak. We'll talk a lot about that too in one of the sessions in the live, if you can make it to the live event each year. And again, live events are open to alumni too. So if you're alumni watching, you can come to live events no matter what. We'll have availability for you to join us. You don't have to come the year you signed up. So those are always going to be available in the future. And then that's a really great place to workshop some of those rapport building techniques.
All right, Carla says, what advice do you have for an INTP only child leaving the country with no definite plan, dealing with ESTJ father and ISTJ mother parents who were used to me being confined by their structure until I moved out 5 years ago and now keep asking questions I don't have answers to and unable to understand my need for exploration?
Wow.
Whoa. That is a heavy question. This is a coaching question, which means that I wouldn't feel super comfortable giving you a lot of advice around this until I knew more specifics. I don't know how old you are. I don't know what your relationship with your parents is like. I don't know the particulars. And so I can't give you specific advice, but I will tell you this. It is unlikely for them to understand the need you have as an INTP to use extroverted intuition or exploration. That's going to be something that they probably won't understand. And trying to get them to understand might be the wrong way of going about it. Most of the time for STJs, the control element is oftentimes about safety, and it's actually expression of love and care. It's their way of trying to make sure that the people in their life are well cared for. So one of the major things you can do is, instead of giving them like specifics on things that you don't have specifics around, reinforce that you will be safe. Reinforce that this is not something that you're going to do in a cavalier way. And my recommendation is that if you're doing it for the first time, you do be safe, right? Like you find ways to make sure that your safety and safety considerations are being handled and taken care of. So I would focus in on what is the actual challenge they're experiencing. It might be that they're asking you for details, but really, what are they asking you for? Is it that they need all the details because they need to have you be in their control? Or are they asking for details that will reassure them of your safety and that you're going to be okay? So go to the heart of the matter and reinforce the elements that are really important to them. And I would say that however you choose to navigate through your life and your dynamics and relationships with the loved ones within your life, if you don't explore, you will experience what I call the death by 1,000 cuts. So do what you need to do to become the best version of yourself. Do what you need to do to become a fully realized version of yourself. And recognize that we have to chart our own path as human beings. A lot of times we feel an obligation to stay loyal to those in our life that have served us well, like our parents. And that is a good feeling. We want to show gratitude and appreciation. That is what we want to be. Is grateful and appreciative. And also we have to carve our own path. So I say that not knowing how old you are, I say that not knowing what your experience is going to be, try to get to the heart of it, try to make sure that they know that you're going to be okay and you'll be safe. And also realize that this is your ride. So do the thing that you need to do in order to become a complete manifestation of your best type.
And keep remembering that all of us as humans, assuming your parents are like most parents, they love you very deeply. All of the things that they do that probably drive you crazy, remember, that's probably an expression of love for them. It's probably a way that they're expressing love to say, maybe they're a little more controlling, but again, that controlling nature might be around making sure you're safe or making sure you're taken care of because they love you. and maybe they just haven't figured out a way to let you go a little bit more. So understand that parents, there's an expression of love there in whatever way they're doing it. And sometimes it's difficult as a child to understand, why is my parent doing this in this way? It feels like they're coming against me, but often it's just a way they're expressing love that may not make sense to you and may make perfect sense to them. So that's kind of a general principle about how parents and children often have a dynamic with each other.
Yeah. All right. Sam says, if I'm trying to get a gift for somebody who I think is in a loop or in the grip, what can I get them to help? What can I get them to help them get out of that place? It's going to sound like a broken record, but if somebody's in a loop or in a grip, well, if they're in a grip, they usually need some healing in their 3-year-old.
Yeah, and a grip is in the 3-year-old place.
The 3-year-old place has them in the grip. It means that their driver or dominant process is exhausted, and they usually need some time to heal.
Or it's on lockdown. Like they're in a context they can't express it.
Right. If it's on lockdown, that's a completely different thing. That means they have to get out of the situation or the mindset that has got them on lockdown. If they're in the grip because they're tired and exhausted, usually almost anything that helps them get their needs met is the right idea. And some rest and relaxation and something that will just help them detox from the rest of life.
Yeah.
If they are in a loop, then you want to get them in their co-pilot or auxiliary process. So you'd want to buy them a gift that would encourage them to go to that space, whichever process or function that is for their type. All right, so what's the difference between a loop and a spiral? I don't know what a spiral is, but the two phrases that are most common are grip and loop. Loop is when the driver and the 10-year-old, or technically the dominant and the tertiary, are sort of looping, and that's keeping them in the world that they're most comfortable in, either in an introverted space or an extroverted space. That's the loop, and they need to get into their auxiliary or co-pilot process that will get them into the world that is less comfortable for them. And in the grip is when they're in their inferior or 3-year-old, and as we mentioned, 2 reasons for that. The first one is their driver dominant is exhausted and they usually need some time and space away from life. And the other experience is when they're on lockdown. Lockdown happens when your environment tells you you're not allowed to express your dominant or driver process, or you don't think you're allowed to for some reason. And then the cure for that is to get out of the context that is not allowing you to express it, or to give yourself permission. And that oftentimes happens through healing. All right. Hey, I asked a question further back, but it might have gotten lost. I'm really interested. Antonia, you mentioned that when someone doesn't fit the archetype of their personality type, you tend to give them gifts that appeal to their 3-year-old function. Why is that? What's going on there? I would say that that's kind of similar to what we just talked about with the grip experience, is if they're not oftentimes when we don't really feel like we're allowed to express ourselves fully, and our types have, like, we don't, like, not all ISFPs have to be artists.
Yeah.
But most ISFPs are artistic in some way, right? Like, expression is very important to them, and something that can be expressive through a sensory medium is almost always something that they need to have. And so if you can't tell how they're being expressive that way, then it might be murky territory to get them something for those, for those processes. So oftentimes what I do is I just default to making their life easier. And it might not be a wow gift, it might not be a pop, and it might be a little anticlimactic, but I know that it will be something that will make their life easier, and usually that's what they need. They need something to make their life easier because they're not in a place where they can fully express. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Have you tried to type pets?
Yes.
Yeah.
We type everything.
Yeah.
We type lampshades.
Yeah. It's just the thing.
And this microphone.
Not as much anymore. Like, I don't think I do as much typing of everything as I used to.
But Duncan is probably an ESFP, our dog.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously he's a dog. He's not a human that's wired with a personality type, but we have a type guess on him because we have a type guess on everything.
Yeah. He's a golden retriever, Springer Spaniel mix, and I'm pretty sure he's an ESFP. He's very boingy and very determined. Like, he's got like this, normally he's like happy and go lucky, and then he's just got this like moment where you just can't get him to budge. So I think you might be an ESFP.
I think all cats are IJs, just by definition.
Maybe
as far as my experience with cats,
you
just can't get them to budge.
All right. Somebody says, what are your love languages? What's your love language?
My love language, I think, is I think my primary one is, I think I give and receive love in a little different ways. I think words of affirmation, I give and receive love with words of affirmation. So there's 5 love languages: gift giving, words of affirmation, physical touch, quality time, and my brain is escaping me. What's the fifth one? Gift giving, words of affirmation, physical touch, quality time, and acts of service. There we go. I knew it. I had it all. And I think I am words of affirmation. What do you think you are?
I think I give with acts of service, and I think I receive with words of affirmation and physical touch. Mm-hmm. I also think I do a little gift giving. I think it's become a thing for me.
That's my bottom.
Yeah.
I appreciate gifts.
Yeah.
I like to give gifts, but it's definitely number 5.
I wouldn't say you like to give gifts.
when it's well decided, when I'm using this methodology we covered tonight and it lands well, I love it.
Yeah,
I'm like,
true.
yes, I feel successful.
Yep.
I just have never been very good at it because I think it's number 5 on my list.
All right, Joseph says, how is the Proflyer training community different from Intuitive Awakening? So we have a Facebook group called Intuitive Awakening, which is open to the public, and we curate it, and we have a great, thriving community there, and we love them. In fact, we had Facebook Live. Unfortunately, our Facebook Live with Intuitive Awakening has been coming in and out, so I feel bad for the community that they kept getting interruptions. But they're just a great community, and it's open to anybody. You don't have to be a personality hacker follower even to get invited or to be allowed into the community. Proflyer training is, we actually hide the Proflyer training Facebook group. Like, we make it so you can't even find it. And we don't just have the Facebook groups, we also have the Slack communities for people who hate Facebook, which I totally understand. So yeah, so it's an exclusive group of people who are trying to develop a skill, a very specific skill, and are trying to help support each other sharpen the saw. And so it's a more focused group. It's a more, people have each other's backs because everybody's trying to build this particular skill. And so there are 2 different communities. Now, there's some crossover. People from Proflyer training end up in Intuitive Awakening, and there are some Intuitive Awakening members that are also Proflyer training students. But it's definitely 2 different communities with 2 very different feels. Thank you for the question, Joseph. All right, King says, when will you guys take seed money to build a PH empire? I want to invest. Soon. Global domination plans enclosed. So
seed money to take world. What is it? Empire building?
Empire building.
I like that. That sounds awesome.
Yep.
Let's just start with having an amazing class this year first. Then we'll build our empire, the next year or something, I guess. I don't know.
Person says, can you give more tips on typing pets? Join Proflyer training. I mean, it's just like,
I would need to know about like what the application of this might be.
Yeah, exactly.
I've never really thought much about it because I haven't thought about an application in a specifics, but maybe there is something I'm not. Maybe you're a dog whisperer or you're a groomer or something, and maybe you want to kind of get. I mean, animals do have their own personalities, right? Like my family's, they have a youth camp, and these horses that they have on the property, very distinct personalities, like all of them. It's like really interesting to see different animals have different personalities that come up. I haven't actually typed any horses, like with Myers-Briggs, but you can just see animals expressing themselves in different ways.
There's actually a whole theory called horsology, and I met a person at back when we were doing consulting with Zappos Insights, which is like a child company of Zappos. If you've ever heard of Zappos, it's like an online retailer, and they have this thing called boot camp at Zappos Insights, which helps people from like other companies, like learn the Zappos style of building culture. And we were doing consultation, like we were consulting with Zappos Insights, doing typology, etc.
We're typing their whole team. We're profiling their team and then giving them basically a breakdown of how they can interact better at their workplace and stuff.
Yeah, doing team building, that sort of thing. And we just happened to be there during their boot camp. So I got to watch the entire boot camp, which was awesome. And one of the people in boot camp was one of the people who had invented horsology, which was the horse personality typology instrument, or whatever it is. I don't know if it's an instrument, but it was a thing. And I had no idea that thing existed. And we had like a really interesting conversation where I think I'm like not the person to talk to about this, because I remember having the conversation and leaving kind of baffled. So I'm not a horse person. In fact, I'm kind of the opposite of a horse person. And so typing pets probably is just not my forte, because I'm way more focused in on humans. But there are people out there who do so. So there's like entire industries.
So I guess that's what you would do, is find out, maybe Google horsology.
Horsology.
If it's still around.
Yeah.
It was many years ago.
It's been a while. It's been like 6 or 7 years.
Yeah.
And Alexis says, I missed the beginning. Will the beginning be available anywhere? Yes, the entire thing will be available, as well as the slides that we used. And
if you're on the webinar tonight, we will be sending you basically a notification with the recording and the slides that you can download or watch. And then also on Facebook Live, if you're watching, we're going to post a link to those right below once those are done. I have to edit the video and get it uploaded, but once we do that, we can make that available. And also the slides will be available too as PDFs.
Somebody said, I wrote you an email earlier today with a question for PHQ, but maybe I'll ask it here. It's a good time. How do you tell if you have a cognitive function in the 3-year-old or inferior position or as a shadow function? For example, in last week's webinar, Antonia talked about her as an ENTP. Introverted sensing shows as a 3-year-old position as a blind spot for doing mundane tasks like having all of her paperwork done and having a real struggle for accepting reality in her life. How would that differ, for example, from how SI might show up for an ENFJ who doesn't have introverted sensing in their car? So I think that we have a special relationship with our inferior 3-year-old process. I think because it is the other side of the coin from our dominant or driver, I think that it whispers in our ear. I think that it takes us by the grip when our driver dominant is tired.
Yeah.
I think that it shows up as being an aspiration that we have to integrate in order to become the manifestation of the best versions of ourselves. Like we have a very specific relationship with our 3-year-old or inferior process. And yeah, I like casually talk about how it shows up as a blind spot, but that's not the end of the conversation. There is a very complex relationship we have with our 3-year-old. The shadow processes, again, I feel like they're a mixed bag. I think it kind of depends on,
And again, shadow process, we're talking about the things that aren't the cognitive functions that aren't in your car. Mm-hmm. So the ones that aren't represented in your car model or your cognitive function stack.
Right. So the 4 processes that aren't in that stack or car. Exactly. And I came from a family that didn't have very much introverted feeling represented or authenticity. And so I've always been really attracted to the process. And like one of the things that Joel brings to the relationship for me is helping me navigate through my feelings, because I came from a family that was very much either FJ or TP. And the only person who used introverted feeling was my brother, who's an ENTJ, and he used it as a 3-year-old or inferior process for himself. So my introverted thinking is actually pretty well developed, I think. And I still had a lot of development to do once I realized that that was my focus. But that was the environment I came from, was all accuracy and harmony. And then
my family, though, is the opposite. I came from a family that was all effectiveness and authenticity.
Yeah.
My mom's an INFJ, and so she has accuracy as her 10-year-old or tertiary process. But other than that, I was not around very much accuracy or introverted thinking in my life. And so I think Antonia has really been being with her in a relationship has been really interesting for me to grow that part of me that's not part of my cognitive function stack or my car model, but there's a part of me that needs obviously to be accurate and think through different accuracy things. So I think it's something that kind of, when I think about I know that Beebe has John Beebe has an entire methodology around this. Mm-hmm. And what I almost likened the shadow processes to like one of those little, like if you ever see a movie or TV show, or maybe you've been to like a bingo hall where there's like those like little white balls that throw the bingo numbers up with a vacuum kind of randomly. It's almost like that in a sense, the 4 that are in your shadow process. There's a lot of theories around this and things. We won't go into all the detail, but that's almost how I imagine it. It's almost like depending on your circumstances, your upbringing, things of that nature, that's where you get access to certain of these, almost popping up randomly out of one of those little machines. That's kind of the picture I have in my mind when I think about them.
Yeah, and like the fact that introverted feeling is not something I ever had any training around, it does mess me up. There are elements where like I just am not in touch with my emotions, and it'll create some challenge. But I never am in an introverted feeling grip. Like I'm in an introverted sensing grip. When I'm tired and exhausted, I don't get into like this crazy emotional space. I get into a space where I'm like, oh, I'm trapped here. Nothing will ever change. I'm going to die in this situation. Like my brain is wired to put me in a specific place when I am exhausted. And so I know that I'm not strong in introverted feeling. I know it's a challenge. I know extroverted thinking is something, or effectiveness is something I have a tendency to like have trouble with and reject. But I never go into an extroverted thinking or effectiveness grip, right? Like, and I haven't had to integrate introverted feeling or extroverted thinking to really realize my extroverted intuition and to see all the possibilities and to recognize what my place in this world is. So I do think we have a relationship with those 4 shadow processes, but there's a very unique relationship we build with our 3-year-old that I think isn't mistaken for any of the other processes. Hopefully that was understandable and helpful. And it is something we talk about in profile training, is the inferior process and how it manifests for each type. So, all right.
We're coming down the home stretch here. So
Yeah.
last minute questions, probably a few more questions here
Yeah, I think
before we conclude for the night.
it looks like we're at the end of the questions. We're about the 90-minute mark. So just
Awesome.
before we wrap up, I just want to thank everybody for, especially if you waited for the Q&A, appreciate it. We do profiler training once a year, and it's a big deal for us. We want to extend it to the community because we feel like it's a game changer for a lot of people. We also want to create win-wins. So even if right now it's not the time for you to do profiler training certification, we totally understand. And we just want to make sure that the community knows that we want to give freely. We want to gift you with content and information that we hope is also a game changer. So this perfect gift giving guide, we hope was really valuable for you. We hope in the next week when you're scrambling to get Christmas gifts for the people who are to shop for, that this will help give you a guide to make a better decision that will show them love in the act of gift giving. And also, we just want to remind you that tomorrow's profiler training's enrollment period closes. So if this is something that you've been thinking about and you just want a little bit more information, please feel free to shoot us an email at info@personalityhacker.com. Go to the link on the slide, personalityhacker.com/profiler training, for a lot of extensive information about what's in the course. And we hope you can join us this year.
Yeah.
Because it's a big deal, and we know it's a big investment of time and resource, but we think it's well worth it. And we just hope to see you in the group this year.
Thank you very much for being here tonight, and we'll see you real soon.
All right. Peace out, guys.
Good night.